Time to talk about one of the wonderful things about doing public speaking, and that is that you get to influence and educate and inform a whole group of people at once. The best thing about this is that you can tailor your speech to the people in front of you. You can make it specific to them and reach them in ways that no video can possibly do. Certainly not one on YouTube. Maybe in this class, we'll see if we can do that. But the idea here is to talk to the specific people that you've got in front of you. And to do that, that takes some analysis. That takes some breaking down of who they are and what they're into, what they're thinking, what they know. And I want to talk a little bit today about how to do that and how to make that part of your regular speech making process. So let's talk about audience analysis. First up, you need to appeal to your audience, and this means you need to know their attitudes, meaning their general evaluations, their feelings about stuff. Those are based on their beliefs, how they, you, each of them perceives reality, and that part is based on their values, judgments of what's good and bad, and that comes from their culture, their experience, what they've been taught along the way. So for instance, if you value human life, you think human life is of prime importance, then you're going to take a look at your reality and you're going to say, well, I don't think I can live with abortion. You'll probably also say, I can't live with capital punishment if you do indeed value human life that highly. And your attitudes, your feelings about these things will be colored by your beliefs. So if somebody says to you, I got an abortion when I was young, your sense of that, your feel of that is going to be, oh, I'm sorry, that's awful that you were in that horrible position. Okay. On the other hand, if you think that human life begins at 0 and ends at 75, 85, whenever, and that what happens before and perhaps what happens after isn't that important, not that valuable, then your beliefs are going to tell you that abortion is not the worst thing that could possibly happen. It may have some bad side effects for the woman involved, but overall, it's not the worst possible thing that somebody could do. And your attitude might be, when somebody said, oh, I had an abortion when I was young, you might say something like, well, that happens. You need to know these things so you can appeal to your audience's values, beliefs, and attitudes. You also need to know their attitudes toward your topic. Okay? And from those, you can probably dig back to their beliefs and maybe to their values. But you're going to have some audiences that just don't know anything about what you're talking about. They are essentially uninformed or neutral. But those speeches, you're going to need to make it relevant to them. You're going to need to connect it to them. You're going to need to be clear about what they're going to get out of this speech. You're going to have some people, some audiences that are friendly about your topic. They like what you have to say. They like what you're talking about. For those folks, you're going to stimulate them. You're going to get them excited. You're going to get them fired up. You're going to use stories to reinforce what they already know. Maybe you will expand what they know a little bit. And then finally, you have hostile audiences. And I guess this is some people's fear of hostility. It's not a terrible thing, and it's a very empowering thing when you can take a hostile audience and move them a little bit in your direction. To do this, you need to set up a rapport with them. You need to be clear about your credibility. You need to use evidence, reason, logic, and know why they're hostile. Know what about their beliefs and their values as opposed to what opposes what you're saying. And by the way, extra points if you figure out why there's a banana on that slide. You also need to know your audience's attitudes toward the topic. And this comes out of their beliefs and out of their values as well. There are going to be audiences that are uninformed, they don't know anything about your topic, or maybe they're neutral, they don't have an opinion. In that case, what you need to do is make the speech, make the topic relevant to them. Tell them what they're going to get out of it. Tell them how it affects their lives. You may end up with a friendly audience. They're always fun. You can get them fired up, you can get them excited, you can stimulate them, you can take them to the next level. You're going to use stories to reinforce what you're talking about. And that's a good time for everybody. A lot of people are afraid that they're going to get a hostile audience. People who just don't agree with you. Probably comes from very different values, very different beliefs than you do, and they're not liking what you have to say. To do that, you need to set up rapport, okay? Be friendly with them, be credible, stay professional, but a warm professional. Use evidence, logic, reason. Know why they're hostile. Get back down to those beliefs and values. And whatever you do, don't challenge them. Okay? Don't challenge them. The worst thing you can do in a speech is make people stop listening. If I say to you, I don't know, something pretty insulting, you're young, what do you know? Okay, the minute I say that, you cross your arms, you look at me, you decide, I am never listening to that woman again, she doesn't even respect me, and you stop listening. Maybe you just stopped listening when I said that. And there's practically nothing I can do to get you to listen again. I can apologize, I can explain myself, I can make up excuses for what I said, but none of that is going to get through because you literally stopped listening. You crossed your arms, you blocked it out, and I can't ever get you back again. You never want to go that far in a speech. I sometimes get questions about what language is appropriate in the classroom. As far as I'm concerned, don't worry about offending me. I've heard it all, and I've heard it all for a lot longer than you folks have. But the question of appropriate language comes around to this question of hostility. What's appropriate in one context, hanging out with your friends, where cuss words, with nearly all of them, are just slang at this point. Fine, go ahead and cuss. On the other hand, if the context is your church, if you're teaching a Sunday school class, then no, you don't use the cuss words because people will stop listening. And those are judgment calls you have to make around language, around topics, around the examples you use. You have to gear it to the audience in front of you. Now, having said all that, let me back up and say, when we talk about a hostile audience, go ahead, make that speech. It's possible they won't like you. There are plenty of people out there who don't like me because of things I've said. That's fine. I make the speech. I talk to these folks because they need to hear what I have to say. And if it's that important to me, then it doesn't matter what they think of me. Their opinion of me doesn't matter. The speech is what matters. So it's okay. It really is. If they don't like you. If they were hostile, if they disagree with you that deeply to start with, they weren't going to be your friends anyway. It's only a problem when you go so far that they stop listening. All right. So here we go. Most people, when they think of an audience analysis, think of a demographic analysis. Okay? They think of these things: the ethnic and cultural backgrounds, the socioeconomic status, political affiliations, age, religion, gender, and there are more. You all know about demographics. Every speech textbook in the world tells you you should do a demographic analysis of your audience. I'm going to tell you right now that I think a demographic analysis is evil and it lies. Why do I say it's evil? Maybe you came up with the answer. This is the fastest way I know to stereotype. And we all do it. I know. You think you are the, what, post-racial generation? Let me try something here. I say to you, let's see. I asked my friend to come speak to you, and she asked me, what were you like? And I said, this group is mostly young, working class Latinos and Latinas. How fast does she stereotype? Pretty much instantly, from the word young. She's just adding to the stereotypes. And I'm pretty sure that even the young Latinos and Latinas in the classroom don't agree on everything, or much of anything, maybe. But I said we all do it. When I said, my friend, she, what did my friend look like? Yeah, she was an old white woman. You did it too. You stereotyped. You assumed that all my friends look like me. Now, I don't know where you got that from, because I'm pretty sure all your friends don't look like you. And yet you stereotyped me. You stereotyped me as somebody who only had friends who were my age, who looked like me, and there you go. It's not your fault. It's not a terrible thing. Our brains do that. When we are confronted with something unknown, like my friend, when I offer you my friend, your brain wants to make some sense out of that. So it puts my friend in a category. And that's fine. That's going to happen. The only way I know to overcome that, by the way, this is just my experience from life, is to train yourself to realize that you just did that. You just put that group, you just put that person in a box. And the minute you acknowledge that to yourself, it's pretty easy to take them out of the box. That's a little life tip here, something I've picked up along the way. I don't always succeed. Sometimes people end up staying in the boxes I put them in, I suppose. But when I do it, I try to trick myself. And that's why I say these things are evil. They stereotype. But they also lie. I'll show you what I mean here. Hang on a second. Let me pull up a whiteboard here for you. And let's take a look at some of these demographics. What was up there? Let's start with just these 5. See what happens here. Those over here. And based on long experience with you folks, or people much like you, let me take a stab here at how these might fill in for a typical class anyway. Probably for racial or ethnic background, the majority of the students in Southern California are going to be Latino, Latina. Statistics tell us that most community college students are female. Probably consider yourselves working class, probably Catholic, and given a 3-year age range, 19 to 22. Okay, so that would be perhaps your typical community college student in Southern California. The problem is, as we go through that list and you fill it in, we're going to end up with maybe 2 or 3 people in the classroom who meet those standards. And that's not an unusual grouping. And we're talking about young working class Latinas. There are millions of them around the area, but there are only going to be 2 or 3 in the classroom. What happens here, and anyone who's taken statistics knows this, every time I put another qualifier up here, I eliminate people from the group I'm talking to. So eventually, I mean, the more I add, eventually I will end up with nobody in the room fitting the demographics of the room. Now, demographics may work in other fields, maybe marketing somewhere, but I don't think they work in public speaking. You can agree with me, you can disagree with me, but I think they are evil because they stereotype and they lie about who's in your audience. I can think of one time when demographics might matter when you're speaking in public. And that is the moment you enter the speaking area, if your audience doesn't know you. When I first appeared here in this class, you did what I suggested most people do, and that is you put me in a box. Okay? You said to yourselves, older white woman. And you thought you knew something about me from that. Okay? Chances are you don't, and you know that. You know you don't know me from that. But in that moment, before I started speaking, before you started figuring out who I was, okay, you were basing your thoughts about me on that. As the speaker, I need to know that that's where our relationship is coming from, right, at that moment. Okay? And the more I speak, the more you learn about me, the more you figure me out a little bit, the less that initial stereotype sticks. Okay? And as a speaker, maybe you need to know that before you start your speech, there is that. You are either like the crowd, you are not like the crowd, you need to reach out and be friendlier with them. Maybe you can use that distance to your advantage, that separation, but you need to know what it is. But after that initial moment, it really doesn't matter. So maybe now you're asking yourselves, so what can I know about my audience? Let's go back to those slides for a minute and I will show you what actually works. It's called a cognitive analysis. There are 4 parts to it. First of all, you want to know what your audience already knows about your topic. Now, this is precisely what you're not going to tell them A speech isn't interesting to anybody if they already know what you're talking about. So unless it's just to lay a little bit of background, you're not going to talk about what they already know. But in order to know what they don't know, you need to know what they do know. So you need to find out what they know so you know what's left for you to cover. Next, you need to know what they need or want. This goes back to the introduction, and I said you needed a connection to your audience. You're going to tell them what they're getting out of this speech, what they need or want. People don't go to speeches, people don't listen to speakers unless they think they're getting something out of it. If you do the audience analysis, you'll be giving them something they need or want. Tell them up front in the introduction what that is. Say you do a whole speech about, I don't know, cutting coupons for groceries. You get to the end of the speech and you say, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you can save 20% on your grocery bill. And there are going to be a whole lot of people in that audience who are sitting there going, oh, damn, I wish I was paying attention. Tell them up front what they're getting out of it, right there in the introduction. Now, let's talk a little bit about their needs and wants. Have any of you taken psychology? If you have, you've probably seen Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I know this picture is a little fuzzy. Let me go through it with you. This is a pyramid. Okay. And on the bottom level, it says physiological, and there's a picture on the other side of a house, and I think it's an apple and a muffin. This refers to your survival needs: food, clothing, shelter. The level above that is safety. This is having some money put back. This is feeling secure in your home. Above that is social, friends, family, lovers. There's a little heart on the side of that one. And above that is esteem with a prize ribbon, a red prize ribbon up there. And this refers to your friends, your family, your lover thinks you're pretty good. They're pretty, they call on you. They ask you to take leadership. They ask for your advice. They admire and respect you. And on the top is what's called self-fulfillment. And on the side of that one, there's a guy in a cap and gown holding a diploma. It was Maslow's idea, and he came up with this in the 1940s, Abraham Maslow. It was his idea that you needed to work your way up in life from the bottom level to the top. Let me step off my speech soapbox here for a minute. Just as an observer and liver of life, who maybe has some critical thinking skills, I'm not sure this really works. If social is having friends and lovers, I know plenty of people who don't know if they have the rent money who have friends and lovers. I know people who don't have a bank account who certainly have the esteem and respect of other people. I'm not sure this works in life. I mean, I certainly know college graduates out there. That's the top of this pyramid: self-fulfillment, college graduate, and they don't have any of this stuff. But let me step back on my speech soapbox for a minute to say this works really well in speeches. The lower you can go on Maslow's hierarchy of needs in finding a need for your audience to listen to your speech, the more people you will get in. If I said to you later this afternoon, there's going to be a webinar on how to be the Buddha, chances are pretty good that you won't go. Okay. But if I go down to the bottom level and I say, there'll be a webinar this afternoon on, I don't know, how to save 20% on your grocery bills. I'm guessing you're more likely to be there. And that's how this works in speeches. You have a general topic, an idea of what you want to talk about. See how far down toward the bottom of that pyramid you can get the specific topic that you're going to talk about out of that. Oops. I want to go back here first. You need to find out what beliefs the group expresses. What did they say they believe in? Don't guess. Your guess is going to be based on stereotypes. You have nothing else to base your guess on. But what do they say about themselves? And you can do this in a lot of cases by looking stuff up. If you're talking to a bunch of Boy Scouts, go read the Boy Scout laws and the Boy Scout oath. This is what they believe in. These are their values, their beliefs coming out of those values. It will color their attitudes about things. Go find out what they say. Okay? Use that in your speech. Okay. Boy Scouts are about honor. Talk about honor if it's appropriate. They're about honesty. Talk about honesty if it's appropriate. You can assume that everybody in a Boy Scout meeting believes in those values, even though they might not. Even though there may be some kid sitting in the corner somewhere who's only there because his mom makes him, and he really wants to be a drummer in a punk band somewhere. Still, you can assume that the group is coming from those values that they talk about. If you're guessing, you're probably in trouble. You're asked to speak to a bunch of business people at their lunch meeting. You assume they believe in capitalism and profits. You get there, and it turns out that this is their Friday lunch philanthropic meeting where they plan on how they're going to give their money away, and they really want to talk to you about, I don't know, providing scholarships to the college. Don't assume. If you come across a group called Ladies Who Wear Big Hats on Sundays, the only thing you know that they value are big hats on Sundays. If you go to, oh, they must be a church-going group. No, they're not. Their pastor threw them out because they refused to give up big hats and nobody could see around them, so they left. Now they have brunch every Sunday morning instead of going to church. Don't make assumptions. And finally, find out what your audience expects. This can be any number of things. They may expect that it's going to be fun, laughing, you're going to have jokes. They may expect that it's going to be a very involved speech with a lot of citations and research behind it. What do they expect? You don't have to give it to them, but you need to know what it is. If you walk into a group, they're expecting jokes and fun. You want to do something serious. If you know that, you can start by saying, I know these speeches are usually fun and everybody has a good time at them, but today I want to talk about something kind of serious. They'll roll with you. They just need to know. And if you start out with something serious and they're expecting jokes, they're just going to sit there waiting for the joke. So know what they expect. And if you have these 4 things under control, you know a whole lot about your audience, that specific audience. And you can adapt your speech. You can tailor your speech to that specific group of people. Even if you're asked to speak on the same subject, more than one group, always do this work because every group is different. And you need to adapt even the same topic to different groups. doing the analysis. A lot of beginning speakers don't do this work. They assume they know the group. Don't be so sure of yourselves. Every experienced speaker does this work. They find this stuff out. They do surveys. If they go to the group ahead of time and they hand out little cards, or they talk to people and ask them, so what do you know about my topic? Let me skip down to published sources. They absolutely look up groups on the web, find out information about them, find out what their beliefs and values are. And they do extended interviews. They talk to people ahead of time. And you're saying to me, how do experienced speakers do all this? I promise you, the President of the United States does it. And he does it by sending an advance crew of people into wherever he's speaking and finds out this information. He pays people to do the audience analysis. Barack Obama was wonderful at this. He could walk into a town, say Cleveland, and he'd stand there and he'd say, Cleveland, I hear you. You've had 2 factories shut down. Unemployment is out of control here. We in the federal government are aware of this, and we're here to help. And the crowd in Cleveland would go nuts because he knew something about them. He was appealing directly to them. And he could go on and do a speech on unemployment or federal aid or wherever he wanted to go from that, but he had that audience. He did that with a lot of work and a lot of preparation. He sent people in. He talked to people in the party who were already there. He knew what was going on. You need to do the same thing. Don't assume you know what this class believes or knows about a topic. Yes, they're college students. Yes, you're all college students, but you're a specific group of college students. You have here 2 ways of getting this information. One is the class discussion about every speech. You're welcome to ask the class about your topic, what they know, what they believe, what they expect, all of that. You also have your group discussions, and maybe you're getting to know those folks a little bit better than other people in the group. Maybe you're a little more comfortable there. But ask these questions and find out. From now on, the speeches you do in this class need to be about and addressed to the people in the class. And one more thing, in the real world, not so much here, but in the real world, you need to do what's called a situational analysis, sometimes called a contextual analysis, the context, the environment that you're in. Find out the time, the date, the place, how long you're supposed to speak for, how many people do they expect, how are they seated? Are they in a big circle? Are they in rows? This is where you find out what they're wearing. As I said before, what they expect. Parking. This is Southern California. If you're driving, you don't want to be driving around the block looking for parking before you speak. You need to know where to park. Is it a special occasion? Is this some anniversary? Is this the founder's anniversary? Is this their Labor Day thing? Okay. Find out. Find out what equipment you have. Do you have a lectern? Are you going to be holding your cards? Do you have a microphone? That changes things up a lot. If you have a microphone that's stuck in a stand, then you can't move. You have to keep your mouth at that microphone. You can still look around the room, but you're pivoting. You're not looking. You're not pulling your mouth away from the microphone. If you take the microphone out, you have a different set of problems. Because now you have your notes in one hand and your microphone in the other, and you can't gesture. So you either have to figure out how to put your notes down, you have to start gesturing with your notes. Be aware of that. Are they eating? Try never to be the dinner speaker. If there are multiple speakers, and you need to find that out, if they assign you as the dinner speaker, try to get out of it. People aren't paying attention. Say something like, I know John is the after dinner speaker, but he's really the one who should be doing the dinner speech. I'll take the after dinner slot when he's done. Don't talk and try to talk when other people are eating. And if there are multiple speakers, find out what they're talking about so you don't do the same thing. Make a list of all of these questions. Now, all of this is going to be easy if you already belong to the group. And you're going to belong to most groups when you start out speaking. You're going to be speaking to college groups or college classes or church groups, groups you know. Doing this work is easy in that case. If you're speaking to groups you don't know, a little bit tougher. The most effective way to do it is to actually go to a meeting before the meeting you're speaking at. Check it out. Meet a couple of people, talk to them, say, hey, I'm your speaker next time. I just thought I'd come by, say hi, check it out a little bit. They'll be happy to help you. But if you can't do that, you still have one more option. In any real world speaking situation, there's going to be somebody who invited you to speak. Okay? Maybe your neighbor has told the group, hey, my neighbor goes to the college. Maybe she can come talk to us about it. The person who invited you to speak will be happy to help you. After all, their reputation is on the line. They recommended you to the group. They want you to look good. So find a time that you can sit down or call your neighbor, prepare all these questions, and really go through them with your neighbor and try to get as much information about your audience as you can, and try to get as clear a picture of the situation as you can, so that you can picture the room, so you can see what's going on, so you can see how people are seated, because so you know if there are other speakers, you can see how this is going to flow in your mind at least, if you can't get to a meeting before the meeting. But you need to do this analysis. And I suppose this is where I tell you the story of my disaster speech. I did all this, except for one thing. I did somebody called me, said, hey, can you speak on this topic, a project I was involved in? And I said, sure. I asked a lot of questions. One of them was, how long? They said, you have an hour. That's a long time for a speech, but okay, I can do it. I lecture for a living, so sure, I'll give them an hour. And I prepped, and I built this beautiful speech that was all intertwined. It went from here to here, and then came back to that point and moved forward from there, and it was all laid out beautifully. It just tight speech. And I walked into the room, and I had forgotten one question. It's one that's on here. How's this seating arranged? Everybody was sitting in a big circle. And there was a seat in that circle for me. And I walked in, and I realized they were expecting a question and answer. That's why the big circle, so we could have a conversation. Maybe a quick 10-minute, but then feedback conversation. Whoa, I'm in trouble here. So I took my very tight, interwoven, piece by piece, carefully constructed speech, and I began. And as I'm speaking, I am trying to think of ways to tighten this 1-hour speech down to maybe 20 minutes. So I'm skipping stuff, but then the stuff that comes after it doesn't make any sense. And I'm moving stuff around in my head, and the whole thing was just as incoherent and disjointed as a speech could be. It made no sense. And the fact of the matter was, I saved maybe 10 minutes in that whole thing. I sat down and to utter silence, I realized everybody was completely confused. They had every right to be. And I promise you, I was never invited back. Do your audience analysis. Don't do what I did. Ask the questions, find the answers. Thank you.